Hey guys.
Hi.
I am Kristen Howerton and I blog at Rage Against the Minivan.
And I'm Paul Martin, and I blog at Paulosophia.
So Paul and I, in addition to both being writers, are old friends, and one of the things that we have always connected on is our interest in politics. However, we both have really different views on politics. I tend to lean more liberal, more socialist, and
I lean a bit right,
yeah,
often,
very often, yeah. So let's just, by way of introduction, I'll talk a little bit about my political background and my interest in politics, and then
Sure.
you talk a little bit too, and then we're going to dive into the current candidates.
Yes, the candidates.
So I actually grew up in a really conservative home, in a both religiously and politically conservative home. My family kind of saw Republican as being the end-all be-all, especially if you were a Christian. And I kind of bought that for quite some time, and then I would say in my 20s, after college, sort of started departing from that, and now I would definitely consider myself more liberal. I kind of identified with the Democratic Party for a long time, but I would say that at this point, am more of a Democratic socialist. Yeah.
And I grew up in a Catholic home, but I had Republican parents, and for most of my life have definitely been on the right. I have definitely voted for Republican presidents since I voted for Ronald Reagan a while ago, and ultimately find myself more drawn to a couple of the major tenets of the conservative party. And this year is one of the most remarkable elections, for sure, for if you're a Republican that I've ever seen. And so it's going to be fun to talk about all this.
Well, remarkable is a nice word.
Yes, remarkable. We are able
I can
to
think of
remark.
other words.
Yes, yeah. It's
cluster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I'm a Christian as well. Informed largely by scripture, of course, but I did spend a couple of years living in Europe, and that took some of the I'll call it rough conservative edges off of me, because European Christians, and I'm talking about real European Christians, tend to view politics in a different way.
Oh, for sure.
And that has shaped me, and some would say it's brought me more to a centrist position.
Well, that's one of the things we've talked about, is it seems like as people travel more and have a little bit more experience outside of the U.S., which, our country is rather nationalist. We tend to think like Americans do it better.
Right.
We couldn't possibly learn from anyone else.
Right.
And I think when you traveled a little more, you realize okay, there are other government options that could work.
Yeah. What was astounding to me, and this was 1998, Tony Blair was running for prime minister, and we were there during the election, and I was in a very evangelical church in London, and it was remarkable to me how it was a given that a Christian would vote as a liberal.
Yeah.
It was a given that Christians would vote for policies that would help the poor.
Yeah.
It's just a kind of a given, and Brits would say, well, how could you not? I mean, that was informative. And also on the abortion issue, the abortion issue amongst Christians wasn't seen as the only thing.
What
at all.
It is here. It's definitely...
It's more nuanced there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of nuance, I feel like that's one of the things that we have talked about when we talk about political discourse. So we talk about politics, and then you and I kind of meta talk about political discourse a lot, and just how difficult it is for people from different ideologies to even talk about this stuff. It's so polarized. What's happening that we seem to be able to talk about it without screaming at each other?
Yeah. And this is, we've had quite a few conversations about, it's a real problem in our country that, in my case, many of my Republican friends who I love are incapable, it seems, to give any credit to a Democrat, say Barack Obama, for an accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, that it just makes no logical sense.
Right.
It can't be the case
Yeah.
logically that because one is a Democrat, that every single decision of the thousands of decisions that this president has made would be bad decisions.
Absolutely.
And I think when you have that kind of black and white mindset, and it cuts the other way too.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I definitely, you know, in the circles I'm in, you know, it's sort of liberal or no way, and same thing. I mean, the accomplishments of someone from the other side, there's skepticism, diminishment, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so that to me that's just a problem, and I think everybody has to get over it, because it's not the case that Barack Obama is, you know, Satan or you know, Hitler or and these are the types of things that I hear coming from my side.
Yeah.
He's just categorically wrong in every single way. I'm a bit more gracious than that. I think I have some big ideological differences where he wants to take the country. I definitely have ideological differences where Bernie Sanders would want to take the country, and I'm sure we'll get more into that. But I don't think Bernie Sanders is a bad person.
Although, okay, it's tough.
I did it. Okay.
Well, here we are talking about this, but I have to admit, I do kind of think Trump is a bad person. So am I? I don't know. Like, am I just being the person I'm saying I shouldn't be, or is he objectively a person?
Well, I mean, I join with many of my Republican heroes in saying that he's not a good person.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as if he's representing the right. The National Review just dedicated an entire edition to, and these are some of my heroes on the right, castigating him, because he really isn't a conservative. And
that's true.
Yeah.
In many,
I mean, he's been pro-life most of his career. He's for national health care. I mean, he doesn't fit the traditional conservative.
And I can name many Republican candidates who I could say, this is a good person. We'd be all right. Yeah. And I felt that way with John McCain. You know, I felt that the Palin pick was odd. Yeah. But I've always thought John McCain was a good person. And I've met his wife, and she's lovely, and we've spoken together, and you know, so.
So Trump is bringing, he's going to.
Well, I mean, let's just dive in.
All right.
Let's dive in.
Sounds like we have.
To the candidates. So, I mean, it's so tough not to talk about Trump, and it's like, that's why Trump is where he is, because it's so tough not to talk about him.
Right. Yeah, and I think the sad part with Trump, you know, with this candidacy is he's masterful as a politician. He really is truly perhaps the best politician this country's ever seen, some are saying, because he knows how to decide to not show up to a debate, and it becomes the biggest story over the last 4 days. Non-participation in a debate becomes he's brilliant in controlling the media.
So for those who missed it, like, talk us through what happened this week in terms of him not showing up for the debate.
Yeah, well, if you watch the first Fox debate, Megyn Kelly asked him a very direct question. Now, again, Fox is
a woman,
but Fox is a conservative, so to speak, news agency. So, so that's what's very paradoxical is Trump is fighting with
stalwart of
the Republican, the answer to CNN, Fox.
Totally.
And it's another, so to speak, a lot of nuance here. A lot of nuance here. But he, you know, Megyn Kelly basically said, "You've made remarkable sexist comments before," and he didn't like the question because it's true, he has, and I could quote them. They're, you know, he's written about them, and he's been, I think, very sloppy, and I think, frankly, misogynist.
Dive into really talking in depth about the candidates. I mean, who do you think are the two front runners at this point?
It seems like Hillary still and Trump for sure.
You think Hillary and Trump?
Yeah, for sure. And there's, you know, we're in the season where there's a lot of debate, you know, because Sanders is very close. In Iowa, he's way ahead in New Hampshire, of course, and Trump and Cruz are neck and neck in Iowa. But after that, Trump is dominating.
Yeah. What is happening there? How? Why?
Well, I think it's first important to say that as a conservative, I don't support Trump. I'm very happy to join with many of my current fellow Republican, you know, heroes, if you will, David Brooks, probably most famously, were just kind of baffled.
Yeah.
Not only is Trump, like I think we might have said in the other segment, very controversial with comments against women, sloppy comments against minorities, but also he doesn't, the National Review recently devoted an entire edition to stating why Trump isn't even a conservative.
Yeah.
And so it's that anti-establishment vote that he's
Yeah.
getting. People that just, they don't like the way things are going, and the guy that's saying loudest, I'm going to change things, is getting people's votes.
Yeah. It's one of the things we have talked about in political discourse is the fact that people on the other side of the aisle tend to villainize the whole person, whoever the candidate is. It's like they can do no right. And I don't like that, because I feel like generally, like, most politicians have something redeeming or good about them.
Right.
Even if I don't like their ideology,
Right.
to assume that they are a bad person is, I think, why our country is in the place it's in. There's no nuance, there's no acceptance that, like, different ideology doesn't mean evil.
Right.
However, in the case of Trump,
Yeah.
I can't figure it out. Am I just being that person who just thinks like this person who I disagree with is just a horrible person, or is he like objectively kind of an awful person?
Well, I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that would say, this is the kind of individual that we admire as a person.
Yeah.
I don't think that there are going to be many Trump supporters that are going to say, this is the man that stands for ethics and morality, and this is the
But why do they want him as president?
Well, because I think he's a brilliant, like a masterful, unlike maybe this country has never seen anybody like him before. He has the capacity to come up with a marketing slogan.
He's a great marketer.
Make America Great Again.
Yeah.
Right? And you have people by the tens of millions saying, I'm going to vote for Trump because he's going to make America great again.
Which is...
Forgetting that there's Congress that would
Right.
be required for
Yeah.
him to pass any of the things he's talking
Well, and
about.
it's also a really slippery slogan because it's playing on, what is that code for? Make America Great Again.
Yeah.
I feel like it's code for put white people back
Yeah.
in
yeah.
their rightful place
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. I think, he has the capacity to speak so simplistically, so we're going to build a bigger border. People have been saying that for decades.
Yeah.
And Trump comes along and says, no one was talking about immigration until I came along.
Right.
And I'm not kidding, tens of millions of people believe that that's true.
Right.
That nobody before him, not even Republicans, not George W. Bush, not the other Bush, not Reagan, nobody was talking about building a wall until Trump came along. And he says things like, well, I'm just going to build a wall. Right? Like he's going to go build a hotel, he's going to go build a wall.
Right.
Not realizing that he can't do anything like it unless Congress is going to come alongside.
He doesn't seem to understand the basic workings of government.
Right. But I hate to say it, and there was an interesting article this week, I don't remember, it might have been in The Atlantic, that basically said, since Rush Limbaugh until today, people have stopped reading newspapers for the most part. They get their information from political pundits.
Right.
And I have many friends that will cite Rush Limbaugh as a news source.
Right.
And so when you
as
have...
opposed to an opinion source.
As opposed to an op-ed. In fact, many of them wouldn't even know what an op-ed is.
Right.
And so when you have people that really don't understand the nuances of government, it sounds good when a guy stands up with a baseball cap that says "Make America Great Again" and says, we're gonna kick ass on these guys, we're gonna bomb these guys, we're gonna build a wall, and we're not gonna do business with China anymore. It all sounds so simplistic
until. Well, although you have said the same thing about Bernie Sanders, that some of the changes that he wants to implement are not realistic, in terms of like the way our government works.
Right. And Hillary, in the last 2 weeks, as Sanders has crept up, is saying the same thing.
Really?
She's coming out and saying, these are great ideas. He has some brilliant, progressive, massive ideas for change, but the issue is an implementation. And there's a difference between a big vision and being able to get things done as a pragmatist. And so Sanders is, he's touting massive ideas in kind of the same spirit of Trump. just on the other side,
Well,
a socialist in this case.
I do think it's interesting that they both really have in common this sort of anti-establishment. I mean,
Right.
people love Trump because he's rogue. He's, you know, he says it like he's not.
Tells it like it is.
Right, he's not a real politician, but people love Bernie for the same reason,
Yeah.
just different ideologies. But I mean, there seems to be a clear thread of Americans being kind of done with politics as usual,
Yeah.
you know. And I think, I mean, I'm a Bernie Sanders fan. I mean, I think one of the big things he has going is that he wants this campaign finance reform, because if there's anything that could really change the way our government works, it would be to put the power back in the politicians' hands to work on representing instead of re-election. Because if you really look at politics, I mean, you know, people, that is their main concern, re-election. We have set up a system where money guides decisions based on re-election and job security.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're in a real pickle. We're in a very big predicament, because to get that message out, Sanders needs to raise millions and millions of dollars. Right?
I know.
To even get
I
that
know.
message out, he
Right.
has to have the most sophisticated metric system, grassroots system. He needs big money himself.
Yeah,
I haven't done the
exactly.
research on how much big money he's getting, but certainly there's Sanders super PACs out there.
Yeah.
And so, and then I think this is where Hillary is saying, it sounds wonderful, Bernie,
Yeah.
to talk about how we need to just take all this money out of the campaigns, but you're a bit of a hypocrite because you're raising tens of millions of dollars at least.
But it's like, you know, don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, he has to do that
Right.
in order to.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, so, you know, the issue of campaign finance reform, what would the Republican response to this idea be? Is this a bipartisan issue? Is it, you know, I mean, are Republicans generally pro campaign finance reform as well?
Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah, I
and
would
there
think so.
there are going to be people like John McCain who have been, you know, advocates in remarkable ways over the course of, you know, 10, 15 years. But it's just so complex because these politicians require massive amounts of money.
Yeah.
You know, John McCain had to violate some of the very principles that he
Right.
upheld in finance reform to launch a presidential campaign
Yeah.
or a re-election a few years ago as senator of
Absolutely.
Arizona. And so again, I think there's the ideal, but also we're in a tough spot. And then you have guys like Trump and soon possibly Michael Bloomberg, who's worth 30-some billion dollars, who will enter the race. And so money is, you know, intricately tied to the capacity to be successful here.
It is. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you, like, you know, on someone who's on the left and advocating for somebody like Sanders, who's a self-proclaimed socialist? I mean, is there a part of you that thinks, you know, this is a nation very much formed on principles that were not socialistic, clearly, you know, ideas of freedom and liberty and limited government. How do you reconcile those two?
Well, I mean, I'm a liberal. I'm not as concerned with making sure we're, you know, I don't have a sacred cow in this is how it was at the beginning, so we have to stick to it. To me, it's like, you know, like any grown-up, as you learn and grow and are exposed to new things, you correct.
Right.
You self-correct. So I feel like our country needs some self-correction. I feel like any, you know, any responsible adult looks at the adults around them and says, who do I want to emulate? Who's doing life well? I do that, you know.
Sure.
As a parent, as a writer, you know, who's doing this well?
Right.
What can I learn from them? And I feel like we, as a country, have been completely unwilling to do that. So, I mean, that, you know, if you get down to the nuts and bolts of the difference between conservative and liberal, I am not holding fast to this is what the founding fathers said. If I feel like we could do better, then I feel like we can, you know, we can learn and grow and move, and it can be fluid.
Yeah, which is the idea of progressive defined.
Right.
You want progress, not necessarily to be stuck in a system that doesn't work. And I think, you know, 9 out of 10 Americans are now saying the system doesn't work. And I think for that very reason, I think you can have a Bernie Sanders who is a self-proclaimed socialist doing so well. It speaks to how the system, or Trump on the other end, though Trump's situation is far more nuanced because, again, I mean, there are very few friends he has on that stage last night of 7. To me, a few very respectable leaders. Nobody would say that he's a good person, or an honest person, or a conservative. He's for national health care. He's given money to Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton. He's been pro-life, pro-choice most of his career. And yet people are foaming at the mouth, conservatives, thinking that this guy, who's not a tried and tested conservative, can get things done.
And there are Christian leaders coming out in support of him. I mean, it's nonsensical.
There is, and I think with me, that Jerry Falwell Jr. coming out this week and formally endorsing Trump at Liberty University, that's where I, as a Christian, and this is very much, not even my political ideology informing me, but more my faith. I think with someone like Trump, with just the explicit comments over the course of decades, and in writing, over sexist comments. If my daughter, if she wasn't my daughter, I'd be dating her. Explicit comments about all the different beautiful women he's laid. Thinking I can't believe. I mean, racist comments using common nouns like blacks, Mexicans, Muslims, which just in and of itself is racist. Because you cannot speak of blacks or Muslims or Mexicans, right? Like they're a monolith. And that's where, as a Christian, I really wonder. And I've been pretty, I've been very sure and certain and outspoken against how I don't see how a person as a Christian could endorse somebody who he's just not by
personifying
any Christian values at all.
Right, and it's like, for me, Bernie Sanders isn't a Christian, but he's espousing more Christian values than Trump. Well, it's definitely going to be an interesting election.
Yes.
So we are going to be having this conversation once a week. We'd love you guys to tune in. We're going to try to keep it civil, but we want to, definitely monitor what's happening.
Right.
And in the next week, we've got the Iowa caucus coming up. So we'll have lots to talk about next week.
Lots. Some experts are saying this could be the most, the Republican Party could fracture at the convention. So we're in for some fun dialogues.
It'll be interesting. So if you want to follow along, we will be posting these on my Periscope account at Kristen Howerton. You can also follow Paul's, which is on the title, Paulo Sophia. You can also check these out on our blogs. We will be uploading them to YouTube and then putting them on our blogs. Mine is rageagainsttheminivan.com.
Mine is paulosophia.com.
And we would love to hear your comments. So thanks for joining us.
Bye.